Ever feel like you're playing a game you were designed to lose? You do everything right. You work hard. Maybe you even picked up a side hustle. You try to save what little is left after you pay your bills, your rent, and buy groceries that somehow get more expensive every single week. You follow the playbook. Get a good education, land a stable job, save your money, and one day, you'll finally get ahead. But that day feels like it's getting further away, not closer. It's like you're running on a treadmill, isn't it? You're pouring all this energy in. You're sweating. You're exhausted. But you're not actually going anywhere. The financial goals you had 5 years ago seem just as distant today, if not more so. What if I told you that feeling of being stuck? It isn't your fault. What if the system isn't broken, but is actually working exactly as intended? Our modern financial system has a hidden feature. It's a rule that quietly operates in the background, and it works against you every single day. The result of this rule is a silent transfer of wealth from your savings, from the value of your paycheck into the hands of huge corporations, governments, and the ultra-wealthy. It's a financial trap, a meticulously constructed cycle of debt and devaluation that punishes savers and rewards debtors. In this video, I'm going to pull back the curtain on that rule. I'm going to show you exactly how the game is tilted. And more importantly, I'm going to show you how the wealthy use this lopsided system to their advantage, and how you can start doing the same. Because once you understand the rules, you can stop being a pawn and start becoming a player. Before we get into the how and why, we need to accept a fundamental truth, one that goes against everything you've been taught about money. The cash in your wallet, the dollars in your bank account, that is not a safe place to store your wealth. In fact, it's one of the riskiest. Think of the money you save like a bucket of water. You work hard to fill it. Every paycheck is another cup of water you pour in. Your goal is to fill that bucket to the brim, so that one day you have enough to live on. But here's the problem you were never told about. The bucket the system gave you is riddled with tiny, invisible holes. Every single day, a little bit of your water leaks out. You don't see it happen. Your bank doesn't send you a notification. There's no line item on your statement. But when you go to use that water 10 years from now, you'll find a huge portion of it has simply vanished. That leakage is called inflation. And while it might not be a grand conspiracy, it is an intentional feature of modern economic policy. The system isn't set up for you to save your way to wealth by stockpiling more and more dollars. That's the story they sell to the middle class. The system's incentives are designed to force you to take the money you earn and convert it into something else, something that can't be created out of thin air. The real reason you can't get ahead is that you are saving in a currency that is subject to constant devaluation. You are meticulously stocking up on something that governments and central banks can create in nearly unlimited quantities. You are trying to fill a bucket that is built to leak. The first step to escaping this trap is to realize the game isn't about who collects the most dollars. The game is about who can convert their dollars into real productive assets the fastest. The people who understand this are getting richer, while those who don't are running in place, wondering why their hard work never seems to be enough. They are the ones whose wealth is silently being siphoned away to fuel the entire machine. So where did this tilted game come from? To understand that, we need to turn the clock back to a single pivotal year when the definition of money changed forever. To pinpoint the moment the rules of money were fundamentally rewritten, we have to go back to August 15, 1971. For decades before that, the world operated on a system called the Bretton Woods Agreement. Established in 1944, it pegged the U.S. dollar to gold. 1 ounce of gold was worth exactly 35 U.S. dollars. Other major countries then tied their own currencies to the U.S. dollar. This created a global financial system with an anchor. It put a discipline on how much money a country could create. While not a perfect break, the U.S. couldn't just print endless dollars because it had to maintain a credible promise that other countries could exchange those dollars for physical gold. It was a system that demanded fiscal restraint. If you wanted to spend more, you had to either grow your economy and produce more, or you had to tax your citizens more. You couldn't just invent money out of thin air. But through the 1960s, the United States was spending colossal sums of money. It was fighting the costly Vietnam War while simultaneously funding ambitious domestic social programs called the Great Society. The government was writing checks that its gold reserves couldn't realistically cash. Other countries, especially France, noticed. They saw the U.S. creating more dollars than it could back with gold, and they got nervous. They started to call America's bluff, showing up and asking to trade their dollar reserves for physical gold, as was their right. The U.S. gold reserves were draining at an alarming rate. President Richard Nixon was backed into a corner. He had two choices: either enforce severe austerity, slash spending, and push the country into a painful recession to restore faith in the dollar, or he could change the rules of the game. He chose to change the rules. On that Sunday evening in August 1971, Nixon appeared on television and announced he was temporarily suspending the dollar's convertibility into gold. This became known as the Nixon Shock. Of course, it was never temporary. In that one move, the anchor was cut. The U.S. dollar, and by extension the entire global financial system, was no longer backed by anything tangible. It became what's known as a fiat currency. The word fiat comes from Latin, meaning, let it be done. Money now has value simply because the government says it does. This single act may be the most significant financial event of the last century. It fundamentally altered the relationship between you and your money. It gave governments and central banks a power they had only dreamed of: the ability to create nearly unlimited amounts of money with a few keystrokes. Think about the implications. If you can create money, you no longer have to make politically tough choices like raising taxes. You can just create the money you need for wars, bank bailouts, or social programs. It's the ultimate political cheat code. And what has been the result? Before 1971, U.S. national debt was significant, but followed a somewhat predictable path. But after the gold standard was abandoned, the debt began a staggering climb. Today, as of late 2025, the U.S. national debt is rocketing toward an almost incomprehensible number, somewhere in the neighborhood of $38 trillion. The numbers are so large they become meaningless. Let me try to put it in perspective. At this level, the debt is growing by billions of dollars every single day. That translates to tens of thousands of dollars every single second. This isn't about politics. It's about math. This is a direct consequence of untethering money from a real-world anchor and giving governments a blank check. The system is no longer about discipline. It's about debt. And this ever-expanding mountain of debt creates a machine that relies on one specific type of fuel to keep from collapsing: inflation. Now that we understand how the printing press was switched on, we need to understand why it can never really be switched off. To do that, we have to talk about a concept popularized by the investor Ray Dalio: the long-term debt cycle. Dalio studied the rise and fall of empires and found a repeating pattern that lasts about 50 to 100 years. It goes like this. A new world order begins, often after a major war. Debt is low, and money is hard tied to something real like gold. This stability encouraged people and businesses to borrow, which fuels prosperity and growth. People feel richer, they spend more, and asset prices go up. But over time, this leads to excess. People, corporations, and especially governments take on more and more debt. Eventually, you reach a tipping point where the debt burden becomes too big to handle. This is when a debt crisis hits. When borrowers can't pay, it triggers panic and economic downturns. Historically, at this point, governments have a choice. They can allow a painful deleveraging, defaults, bankruptcies, and a severe depression. Or they can print money. They almost always choose to print money. The government has its central bank. Like the Federal Reserve in the U.S., create new money to buy government debt. This injects cash into the system and papers over the immediate crisis. This is the moment a country moves from a hard money system to a fiat money system, exactly what happened in 1971. But this isn't a solution. It's a trade-off. In exchange for avoiding a deflationary depression, you get sustained long-term inflation. The value of the currency itself begins to decline. This is the phase of the cycle we have been in for over 50 years. Most people think of inflation as prices going up. That's just a symptom. The disease is the devaluation of your currency. It's not that coffee is getting more expensive. It's that your dollar is getting weaker. Since 1971, the US dollar has lost a massive amount of its purchasing power. It is a direct result of expanding the money supply to manage that ever-growing mountain of debt. So, who does this system of perpetual debt and inflation benefit? It's simple. It benefits borrowers and it punishes savers. Think about it. If you have a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage and the currency is being devalued every year, you are paying that loan back with dollars that are worth less and less. Your debt is effectively shrinking in real terms. And who is the biggest borrower of all? The government. With its massive debt, inflation is the government's best friend. It allows them to pay back their old debts with new, devalued currency, a transfer of wealth from anyone holding the currency to the government itself. This is why inflation is called the silent tax. It's a tax you never vote on. It's a tax on every dollar you hold in a savings account. While you sleep, the central bank's policies are diluting the value of your hard-earned money to make the government's debts more manageable. Now, who gets hurt the most? The people who do exactly what they were told. Work hard and save their money. The responsible saver is the one being systematically impoverished. Their savings, their leaking bucket, are being used to prop up a system drowning in debt. This creates a dangerous split in society, a chasm between those who are losing to this silent tax and those who are winning. This system of continuous debt and money creation has created a tale of two economies. There's one economy for people who earn wages and save in cash, and a completely different one for people who own assets. For the wage earner, the last 50 years have been a story of frustratingly slow progress. Since the early 1970s, right around the time the gold standard was abandoned, productivity has continued to climb, but the growth in real hourly wages for the average worker has been much slower and uneven. Look at a chart of worker productivity versus worker pay. For decades, they rose together. As companies became more efficient, workers shared in that prosperity. Around 1971, those two lines began to separate. Productivity soared, but wages lagged behind. So where did all that new wealth go? It went to the owners. It flowed into corporate profits, and it poured into the prices of assets. This is the other side of the coin. While real wage growth has been sluggish, the value of assets, things like stocks, real estate, and fine art, has gone into hyperdrive. When a central bank injects trillions of dollars into the economy, that money doesn't flow evenly. It flows in the financial markets, pushing up stock prices because there are more dollars chasing the same number of shares. It drives up real estate prices because borrowing is cheap. This is the core of the problem. The system's incentives inflate the value of the things the wealthy own, while the Federal Reserve's own 2% inflation target intentionally devalues the money that the average person saves. The recent past has made this painfully clear. From early 2021 to mid-2025, consumer prices rose significantly. While wages also grew, for many, the increase wasn't enough to cover the rising cost of living, resulting in a net loss of purchasing power. You're working just as hard, if not harder, yet you feel like you're falling behind. This isn't just an abstract theory. It has brutal, real-world consequences. A huge portion of your taxes, the money taken from your paycheck, doesn't go to building roads or funding schools. It goes to just paying the interest on the national debt. For fiscal year 2025, projections for net interest payments on the debt are approaching a staggering $1 trillion. That's one of the largest items in the federal budget, rivaling spending on Medicare or national defense. That amount breaks down to over $7,000 per American household for just 1 year. Let that sink in. The average household effectively pays thousands of dollars a year, not to pay down the debt, but just to service the interest on it. And who receives those interest payments? The holders of the debt, foreign governments, large financial institutions, and the wealthy individuals who own treasury bonds. It is a massive, direct transfer of wealth from working taxpayers to the capital-owning class. You are on a treadmill, running faster and faster, but a portion of the energy you generate is being siphoned off to power someone else's escalator. They get to ride up, effortlessly, while you're left exhausted, wondering why you're not getting anywhere. Now that you know the rules of the game, you can play it differently. You can stop playing the game they want you to play and start playing the game the wealthy actually play. The solution doesn't start with a secret stock tip. It starts between your ears. It starts with a fundamental mindset shift. You have to stop thinking like a saver and a consumer. You have to start thinking like an owner and an investor. From the time we're kids, we're taught the virtues of saving. A penny saved is a penny earned. We're told to put our money in a savings account where it will be safe. But as we've just spent the last 15 minutes establishing, that is misleading. In a system with persistent inflation, your savings account isn't a safe. It's a leaky bucket. Savers are the ones getting punished. Their purchasing power is being systematically eroded to subsidize the debts of others. Investors, on the other hand, are rewarded. They understand that cash isn't a permanent store of value. It's a tool, a temporary holding place for wealth before it's deployed into something real. They see cash like a hot potato. They don't want to hold it for long because they know its value is constantly melting. This mindset shift changes everything. A consumer, when they want to buy something, a car, a house, a vacation, asks, "Can I afford this?" What they mean is, do I have enough cash? Or can I handle the monthly payment? An investor asks a completely different question. How can I afford this? The difference is subtle but profound. The first question is about limits. The second question is about expansion. Instead of thinking about how to spend the money they have, they think about how to acquire an asset that will pay for the thing they want. Want a new car? The consumer depletes their savings to buy a depreciating vehicle. The investor buys an asset, like a rental property or a dividend-paying stock, that generates enough monthly cash flow to cover the car payment. The asset buys the liability. This isn't about being rich enough to do this tomorrow. It's about changing how you view the world. It's about seeing the difference between things that take money out of your pocket and things that put money into your pocket. The system is geared to get you to spend your life accumulating liabilities that you pay for with your labor. Financial freedom is achieved when you accumulate enough assets that their income pays for your lifestyle. Stop asking, "How much can I save?" Start asking, "How many income-producing assets can I acquire?" This is the first and most crucial step. Reprogram your brain to see the world not as a wage earner, but as a capital owner. Because in this game, it's the owners who benefit from the rules. Once you rewire your brain, the next step is to act. The core strategy is simple in concept, even if it takes courage in practice. You must own assets. You have to trade your endlessly printed, the value in paper money for things that are scarce, productive, or both. The wealthy don't hold their fortunes in cash. Their wealth is in businesses, real estate, and stock portfolios. They own things. Let's break down the most accessible asset classes that put you on the right side of the inflation equation. First, real estate. Owning property is a classic way to benefit from the very system that crushes savers. When you buy a property with a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, you lock in your biggest expense in today's dollars. Over the next 30 years, as inflation continues, the value of the property tends to rise. The rent you can charge tends to rise, but your mortgage payment stays exactly the same. You are paying back your loan with dollars that are becoming less valuable every single year. Meanwhile, your tenant is paying down your debt for you. You're using the bank's money and the system's inflation to your direct benefit. I know what you might be thinking. I can't afford to buy a house. That might be true today, but remember the mindset shift. Start by learning. Learn about house hacking, where you buy a duplex, live in one unit, and rent out the other. Learn about real estate investment trusts, or REITs, which let you buy shares in a portfolio of properties just like a stock. The point is to understand the mechanics of why it works. Second, and far more accessible, is owning stocks. This doesn't mean risky day trading. Owning stocks simply means owning a piece of a business. And what do businesses do when their costs go up from inflation? They raise their prices. When the price of bread goes up, the person buying the bread loses purchasing power. But the company making the bread, their revenue goes up. They pass the cost of inflation to the consumer. By owning a share of that company, you become part of that process. You're no longer just a consumer being squeezed. You're also the owner who benefits. The easiest way for a beginner to do this is by buying a low-cost broad market index fund, like an S&P 500 index fund. With one purchase, you become a part owner of 500 of the largest companies in America. You are betting on the entire economy. As these companies innovate and adjust for inflation, the value of your ownership grows. You move from being just a cog in the labor force to being part of the capital class. Third, there are hard assets. This category includes things like gold and silver, and for some, Bitcoin. What these assets share is a scarcity that cannot be manipulated by a central bank. No matter how much debt the government takes on, it cannot print more gold. The supply of Bitcoin is fixed by its code. These assets don't typically produce cash flow. Their primary function is to be a store of value and escape hatch from the fiat system. When faith in paper money wanes, people historically flock to hard assets. Owning a small percentage of your wealth here can be a powerful insurance policy. The key takeaway is this: the system is set up to transfer wealth from cash to assets. Your path to security is to position yourself as a recipient of that transfer, not a victim of it. You must own things. Take your value in dollars and trade them for a piece of a business, a piece of income-producing property, or a piece of something verifiably scarce. That is how you stop running on the treadmill and step onto the escalator. We've talked about mindset. We've talked about strategy. But there is a third, and arguably most important, part of this journey. It is the one asset that no market crash can destroy and no government can inflate away: your own financial education. Do you think it's an accident that these topics aren't widely taught in school? That you can graduate high school, even college, without ever learning how central banking works, what fiat currency is, or the difference between an asset and a liability? The consequence of this is a population of workers and consumers who don't understand the rules of the game being played around them. A financially literate population is a threat to a system that benefits from a hidden inflation tax and the quiet accumulation of debt. Therefore, the single most powerful act of rebellion you can take is to educate yourself. This video is a starting point, not a finish line. Your journey to financial freedom is a journey of continuous learning. Become obsessed with understanding how money really works. Commit to reading one book about money or investing each month. Listen to financial podcasts on your commute. Watch educational YouTube videos like this one in your downtime. Follow smart financial thinkers on social media and absorb their perspectives. Learn the language of money. Understand what balance sheet, cash flow, and capital gains really mean. The more you learn, the less intimidating it all becomes. You'll start to see the world through a new lens. You'll see news about the Federal Reserve not as boring background noise, but as a direct signal about the future value of your money. You'll see a new apartment building not just as a construction site, but as an income-producing asset someone is using to build wealth. Financial education gives you the confidence to take action. It helps you overcome the fear that holds so many people back. It allows you to build a plan that is right for your life and your goals. It is the ultimate tool for taking control. The system may benefit from you staying distracted and overwhelmed. It wants you to believe this is all too complicated. Don't fall for it. You are more than capable. Taking control of your financial education is the ultimate investment in yourself, and it's the one asset that will pay you dividends for the rest of your life. We've covered a lot of ground, so let's bring it all home. That feeling you have of running in place no matter how hard you work is not a personal failure. It is a rational response to the financial system you're operating in. You feel stuck because the very money you save is subject to policies that ensure it loses value over time. The rules of the game were changed in 1971 when the dollar was cut loose from gold, kicking off a 50-year cycle of mounting debt and money creation. This created a system where inflation becomes the path of least resistance, a silent tax that systematically transfers wealth from savers to the owners of assets. You've been trying to save your way to prosperity in a currency that is designed to decline, while the wealthy have been using that same system to inflate the value of the things they own. But you are not powerless. The trap is real, but an escape route exists. The solution is a three-part journey. First, rewire your brain to think like an owner, not just a saver. Second, begin the process of converting your depreciating cash into appreciating assets, like real estate, stocks, and hard assets that put you on the winning side of inflation. And third, commit to a lifelong pursuit of financial education, because knowledge is what gives you real power and control. They may have set the rules, but in doing so, they also revealed the strategy. The key is to understand how the machine works and choose to own a piece of it, rather than being just a cog within it. This isn't about getting rich quick. It's about securing your financial future in a world that threatens it. It's about taking back control. It's about finally getting off the treadmill. The choice is yours. Now I have a question for you. Based on everything we've discussed, the massive debt, the money creation, the divide between assets and wages, where do you think we are in the long-term debt cycle right now? If you got value from this video and it opened your eyes to the real mechanics of money, do me a favor and hit that like button. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.